Okay, so last time we looked at the importance of the things that Yehovah says, his word, and how it is light and how it is life to us and to anyone who will take it on board. This week I want to look at the importance of the things that he doesn't say. Now, there are many things in Scripture that kind of get a cursory mention, but Yehovah doesn't fill in all of the details for. And they're the sorts of things that I'm talking about. If Yehovah doesn't give us any information on a particular subject, that is because de facto it is unimportant. It's not important at all to us. In fact, it might be important that we don't know that information. So we need to kind of quell that desire within us for information about things which he doesn't give us any information on. It becomes kind of a preoccupation for some people to kind of fill in the blanks of Scripture, kind of look into areas that aren't detailed exactly for us. So as I say, at the least it's unimportant, and it might actually be important that we don't have that information, otherwise Yehovah would have given it to us. The verse which kind of nails this idea is Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret matters belong to Yehovah our Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah. Okay, so what he reveals is what is important to us. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So this, it's not an injunction against curiosity. Curiosity is how we naturally encounter such topics. So I want to acknowledge that that's naturally, when we hear of something, we're not given any details, that's kind of naturally how we encounter those things. We want more information, but I think it's good for us to recognize the limitations that Yehovah puts upon us by what he constrains within his word. In other words, if he doesn't give us any information on it, that is an intentional thing. It's a limitation, in fact, that he has put upon us. So when we think, it would be good to know about X, Y, Z, we should recognize that instinct is probably wrong. That not as in it's wicked, as in it's probably wrong that it would be good for us to know whatever it is. He gives us everything that we need within his word. One topic, as an example, that he doesn't give us any detail on is what we see in Genesis 6 verse 4, the word Nephilim. Okay, it's probably from the verb root Nephal, which is to fall. Nephal means various things, in fact. But this word we're not given any detail on. It's mentioned in Numbers 13, verse 31, I believe. That's the only other time that it's mentioned in the Bible. If Yehovah wanted us to know more information about this, he could have told us more information. But the people who become preoccupied with these things which are not in the word, as if they crave more information about them, we'll look to other texts like the Book of Enoch, which talks about the Nephilim, probably written by somebody who was similarly preoccupied with what was written in Genesis. Who are these Nephilim? And we see that that's kind of fleshed out a bit in the Book of Enoch. Some people may well think that the Book of Enoch is inspired. People who've been watching the channel for a while will know that I've looked at that topic. If people are interested in it, I would suggest this video, The Mysterious Book of Enoch. You see there that it is 6 hours long. So it's quite an in-depth study about Enoch. You might well think, well, didn't Yeshua quote from the Book of Enoch, and didn't Moses talk about things that were only mentioned in the Book of Enoch? I look at all of that within this video, but these are the sorts of places that people end up at when they desire that information that Yehovah doesn't give us. Instead of saying, well, if it was important, Yehovah would have given us that information. They end up going to places like this. And one thing that I will point out to you that is useful for you to acknowledge and think about the things that you do in your life. Don't treat videos on these sorts of subjects like entertainment. People love videos about Enoch, or about this prophecy is being fulfilled in this thing that's happening in the world, or whatever. People like things that are tangentially associated with the Bible. They, I imagine, feel like they are studying the Bible by looking at things which profess to pertain to be about, or profess to pertain to the Scriptures. Those things are not related to the Scriptures. There's an association there. They might mention the Scriptures, but actually they don't teach you about the Scriptures themselves. And as we'll see as we go through this, those things are actually harmful. You actively want to avoid those things because they are a means by which you will be led astray from the simple truth that is found in the Scriptures. You start making things kind of extravagant where extravagance doesn't exist. In Titus, Paul's letter to Titus, he writes, "For there are many unruly men," he calls them senseless talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision, that was the Jews, whose mouths have to be stopped, to upset entire households, teaching what they should not for the sake of filthy gain. And you'll see this sometimes. People will kind of make a business by teaching about these things that are mysterious, or that have intrigue in them, intrigue people. But the Scriptures state that they should not be teaching these things, and they do so for the sake of money. One of them, a prophet of their own, said, "Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. This witness is true. Therefore, rebuke them sharply in order for them to be sound in the belief." And Paul's letter to Titus, Titus was a shepherd of a flock, so this is what Paul is instructing this man in, how he should teach others. Rebuke the people who go after this sort of thing sharply, because, as I say, these things are harmful. They're not just harmless things that you can just take in as entertainment and not be affected by. They will affect you, and they are means by which you will be led astray. You might not start being led astray from the scriptures, but that is very much the place that you may end up. Not paying attention to Jewish fables and the commands of men who turn from the truth. And one reason that it's really harmful is they mix in myth and fables with the truth. You've got on the one hand something that is true, something that will bring light and life to your life, something that will put you in right standing before Elohim. And when you take myth and fable and things that aren't true or might be true but you don't really know, and you mix them in with the truth, what you're doing is you are lightly esteeming the word of Elohim. You're treating it as if it is actually of little account. And you'll notice with all of these things that actually non-believers cherish them. They think that these things are brilliant. You can speak to somebody secular about the book of Enoch, and it was banned from the Bible and all these other things, and people kind of know about the book of Enoch and they are interested in those things, or like end times prophecy. People who are of the world will be interested in them, whereas they will not actually be interested in the scriptures that will profit them, things that are light and life to them. As we saw last time, they're in darkness and they won't come to the light lest their deeds be reproved. That's a good way to know that these things are not light, because those of the darkness are also fascinated by them. In 2 Peter 1:3-4, it says, "As his divine power has given to us all we need for life and reverence." How? Through the knowledge of him who called us to glory and uprightness. So he has given us, by his divine power, through his word, he's given us all that we need for life and for reverence. Once you start straying outside to other things, like taking them in as entertainment and thinking that they will instruct you in the word, you start to be led astray, and you start to be open to things which are nonsense, that have nothing to do with the truth, nothing to do with the light and life of the word. Verse 4 says, "Through these there have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises." That is through the knowledge of him who called us to glory and uprightness. These things that we need for life and reverence. Through them we've received great and precious promises, so that through these, again, you might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped from the corruption in the world caused by lust. So the scripture gives us everything that we need. When you think that you need something beyond that, that is falsity. That's not true. As we see here, the purpose of scripture is for us to procure liberty from the corruption that's in the world that is caused by lust. The scripture is for us to be able to alter our nature so that we might be partakers of the divine nature, so that we may be more like Yeshua. That's what the word is for. Things that don't instruct you in that aren't to do with what the word is trying to instruct you in. So don't be led astray into thinking that they are, just because they're kind of tangentially related to the scriptures. Jeremiah 9:23-24 speaks about this. It says, "Thus said Yehovah, let not the wise boast in his wisdom, let not the mighty boast in his might, nor let the rich boast in his riches. But let him who boasts boast of this, that he understands and knows me, that I am Yehovah, doing kindness, justice, and righteousness in the earth. For in these I delight, declares Yehovah. And the word gives us everything that we need for life and reverence so that we can be partakers of this divine nature. This is what the word is for. It's not for all these things that people like to associate with it. The word is food for us. It's good for us. It's nourishment. It is that by which we procure for ourselves light and life. In Hebrews 13 verse 9 it says, "Do not be borne about by various and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be established by favor or grace, not with foods which have not profited those who have become occupied by them." As I say, people become preoccupied by these sorts of subjects, but they do not profit the people who are preoccupied by them. Often they are very much to their detriment. In fact, that they've become occupied by these subjects. Rather, it's good to be established by favor, by grace. And how do we do that? We become partakers of the divine nature so that Yehovah would look favorably upon us. You get subjects like the gap theory, the pre-Adamic race. People get caught up in ideas of what's this new temple that's going to be built in Jerusalem. Let's find out all about that, or about prophecy, or, as I've mentioned, the extra biblical texts. None of these things will profit you at all. They're things by which once you start looking into them, you're opening yourself up to be led astray. And that's exactly what the word says happens to such people, as we'll see. But don't be borne about by various and strange teachings about the word. Okay, focus on the essentials of the word. Let it be to you life. Let you learn from it reverence. I've put this slide up before, but an exact interpretation of any prophecy is not necessary, and that is in fact not the purpose of prophecy. All prophecy teaches us the same specific things. The wicked are punished. Yehovah will justify whomever he will justify. The righteous are kept from times of trial, famine, and violence. The righteous will ultimately be triumphant. One doesn't need to anticipate and interpret events surrounding oneself using biblical prophecy. If you miss prophecy's real teaching, no amount of preparation or fear will save you. So what Scripture is actually for is for all the things that prophecy actually teaches. It's to teach one to turn from one's own wicked heart and wicked desires to be partakers of the divine nature, to do the things that Yehovah instructs us in. 1 Corinthians 1:26-31 says, "For the word of the cross is indeed foolishness to those who are perishing," as we looked at last time. "But to us who are being saved, it is the power of Elohim. For it has been written, I shall destroy the wisdom of the wise and set aside the learning of the learned ones." Where is the wise? Where is the scholar? Where is the debater of this age? Has not Elohim made foolish the wisdom of this world? So why would we try to educate ourselves in the wisdom of the world, the wisdom that comes from books like the Book of Enoch, which is just a storybook which builds upon what the Bible has already established and uses names that we find in Scripture as if to lend credibility to itself. not speaking to the motives of whoever wrote the book of Enoch, just saying that this is why it is given credence by people who know the word, because it's got familiar names, and it's kind of familiar in the sort of things that it's talking about, but it is the wisdom of the world. It's not that which will save one's soul. It's not what we need for life and for reverence. For since in the wisdom of Elohim, the world through wisdom did not know Elohim, it pleased Elohim through the foolishness of preaching to save those who believe. Because Elohim doesn't need, the wise of the world. He doesn't need the scholars of the world, those who can debate. He doesn't need those people. Would they teach him anything? He might be able to use such a person to be able to disseminate his word, but he doesn't need them. And it says here, it pleased him, in fact, that those people who didn't know him through their great wisdom that they have, they think that they really know what's going on in the world. But it pleased him through the foolishness of preaching. Not that it is foolishness, just that it is foolish to those who are perishing. It pleased him through this, which seems like foolishness to the wise, to save those who believe, those who see the light, see the life in the word, and go towards it. And since Yahudim, Jews, ask a sign, and Greeks seek wisdom, so the people who are believers in Elohim, as in they believe that he exists, they want a sign. They want Elohim to come down and show them this is the way that things are. Show them with a sign. The Greeks seek wisdom. They think that if they can just understand things, then they will know of Elohim. So neither of these is desirable. We shouldn't be those who are seeking a sign from Elohim, like, if Elohim wanted me to do something, he would come down and tell me himself. And we shouldn't be like the Greeks who seek wisdom. We should be those who are of belief. Again, those who recognize the light and the life in the word, that it is all that we need for life and reverence, and who believe it because of that. Yet we proclaim Messiah crucified, to the Jews a stumbling block, and to the Greeks foolishness. Okay, but to us who believe, Messiah crucified is great wisdom from above. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Messiah, the power of Elohim and the wisdom of Elohim. For the foolishness of Elohim is wiser than men, and the weakness of Elohim is stronger than men. For look at your calling, brothers, that there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble. But Elohim has chosen the foolish matters of the world to put to shame the wise, and Elohim has chosen the weak of the world to put to shame the strong. If you're seeking wisdom that is outside of the scriptures, it is entirely unnecessary. As I say, it's actually harmful to you to be looking for some kind of instruction or some kind of wisdom that is outside of the word, because it's not recognizing the true value actually that is within the word. It is looking outside, looking to the world for further instruction, further knowledge, further wisdom. And Elohim has chosen the lowborn of the world and the despised and the ones that are not, that he might bring to naught the ones that are, so that no flesh should boast in his presence. And of him you are in Messiah Yeshua, who became for us wisdom from Elohim, righteousness also, and set apartness or holiness and redemption. So for those who truly recognize what the word is, who Messiah is, what is given to them by the word, they don't need the wisdom that comes from outside of that. It might be seductive. You might think, oh, well, by watching these videos, I'm actually watching videos about the Bible. But you're not. You're being misled by false information that is not the truth of the word. And once you start mixing that in with the truth, you can very easily be deceived. That as it has been written, he who boasts, let him boast in YHVH. In 2 Corinthians 2 verse 12 it says, for our boasting is this, the witness of our conscience, that we behaved ourselves in the world in simplicity and sincerity of Elohim, not in fleshly wisdom, but in the favor of Elohim. This is where there is true value. Okay, this is what we can boast in, that we have behaved ourselves in simplicity and in sincerity, that we have done the simple things in the Torah, that we have loved one another, that we have shown one another kindness and compassion. These are the things that are so easily glossed over by people who want more information about the Nephilim, or about, is King Charles the Antichrist, or whatever nonsense people get preoccupied by. For us, though, who recognize the light and the life that come from the word, it's in these very simple things that we know that we have a witness of our behavior before Elohim, that we are reconciled unto him. Those things may not seem like foolishness to people who go after these other sources of information, but they don't seem as interesting, as intriguing as these other matters. In 2 Corinthians 10, it says, for we do not presume to count ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves, comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. For we shall not boast beyond measure, but within the measure of the limits Elohim assigned unto us, to reach even to you. And as I mentioned before, what Elohim doesn't say in this word is one of those limits. For we are not overextending ourselves as if we did not reach to you, for we also came to you with the good news of the Messiah. Okay, and that word, huper egteno, to extend beyond the prescribed bounds, stretch out beyond measure, stretch out over much, it says, is how Blue Letter Bible understands that word is used in Scripture. In the Strong's definition, it says to extend inordinately or stretch beyond. So when it's talking about the measure of the limits Elohim assigned to us, what Paul is saying is we don't go beyond that as if we were not able to reach you. I think a lot of times people think that these other things are necessary maybe to reach people who are in darkness, like these matters of mystery or intrigue are going to be convincing to people, but we've been given very defined limits by Elohim, what is good for us to know, and we shouldn't seek to extend beyond that. We shouldn't seek to go beyond the limits that Elohim has given to us, presuming to know what is good for us to understand. Verse 15 says, not boasting beyond measure in the labors of others, but having an expectation that as your belief grows, we shall be greatly enlarged by you according to our limits. And the Greek word for limits there is talking about the boundaries which Elohim has set. It's all in the context of verse 13 there. It says, to bring the good news in the parts beyond you, not to boast in another's limits in what has been prepared. It's a bit of a difficult verse to translate, but it's not important for us to go into at this point. Verse 17, it says, but he who boasts, let him boast in Yehovah. For not he who commends himself is approved, but he whom the master commends. So what is important for us is to learn how we will be commended by Yehovah, to take on board those things which are light and life to us. And an important part of this is what Paul details. We also came to you with the good news of the Messiah, those things which are foolishness to those who are perishing. And he mentions the good news, the gospel, again in verse 16. So these are things in which there is real worth. If you think, well, I know the gospel, I know the good news, and now I want something more, then that is an unhealthy preoccupation with things that Yehovah doesn't deign to tell us about. 2 Corinthians 2:12-13. For our boasting is this, the witness of our conscience, that we behaved ourselves in the world in simplicity and sincerity of Elohim, not in fleshly wisdom, but in the favor of Elohim, and much more toward you. So that encompasses the gospel in the favor or in the grace of Elohim. Our boast is that we know Elohim, we know his righteousness, we know his justice, and we've behaved ourselves in a way that's acceptable to him. For we are not writing any other matters to you than what you recognize and know. It could be recognize and know well. Those words, anagnosko and epignosko. Anagnosko can mean to read, but really it's talking about one's knowledge of something. And epignosko is like an all-encompassing knowledge. So know well would be a good translation there. So we're not writing any other matters to you, just that which is established in the word. We don't go to the wisdom of the world. We don't go for fleshly wisdom. We instead establish ourselves in the favor of Elohim, in the gospel, and in those things in which we can act in the simplicity and sincerity of Elohim, those things which are good for us. We don't go beyond that. As Paul says here, we're not writing any other matters to you. Acts 20:29-32 says, for I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves shall come in among you, not sparing the flock. Also from among yourselves men shall arise, speaking distorted teachings to draw away the disciples after themselves. Therefore watch, remembering that for 3 years, night and day, I did not cease to warn each one with tears. And now, brothers, I commit you to Elohim and the word of his favor, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among all those having been set apart or sanctified, made holy. So what is being said here is, from among you, from among those people who profess to believe the word, there will come those who spread distorted teachings. He says, I commit you to Elohim and to the word of his favor. Basically saying, look, when I go, there are going to be those people who come up. They teach these perverse, distorted things that are of no profit to you. But I'm just going to leave you with the word. I commit you to the word of his favor, because the word of his favor, the word of his grace, is able to build you up so that you would inherit the kingdom. But the things which enable us to inherit the kingdom are those simple things. The gospel, those things by which we can say that we have behaved in the simplicity and sincerity of Elohim. Things like kindness and compassion. If you see the word, if you read the word and you really understand it, you really actually see the light in it, they are the things which will be profitable. Don't let people who will come up, and they will come up, among believers, they'll speak these distorted teachings. Don't let them lead you astray into nonsense. Be committed to the word of Elohim. I'll see you next time.